Hi everyone, welcome. I'm down here in my wormery and no, we're not having a pizza party. These boxes are all empty, as you can see. If you ever buy pizza, then you'll notice that a lot of times the boxes have nice patterns to them. Sometimes they're really boring, like this one here, no pattern at all. It's funny because my local pizza place where I usually get pizza from, I believe these are actually the last 3 boxes in which I received a pizza from them. So you can see they constantly change their box type from having no pattern to this kind of pattern to that kind of pattern. And the one thing that they changed recently, in the most recent pie that I purchased from them, the pizza came with one of these to protect the bottom of the box from the juices or greasy oil spots, whatever. You could see everything that has fallen, just to, I guess, keep the strength of the box up to make sure it doesn't weaken from getting damp or whatever. And this stuff was weird. It kind of has like this corrugated appearance to it, and I do believe that both of the materials are stuff that the worms would eat. So I thought that I would put these into the 2 bins that we're going to be checking in on today to see how it goes. I'm not going to really break it up into little tiny pieces. I'm going to put them in pretty large, just in case they don't break down. They'll be easily removed. The 2 systems you see here in the corner, those are the ones that are being fed today. As you can see, the label refers to ANC. These are the NeW, Northeast Worms, versions of the African night crawlers I received pretty recently, going back a little further even. As you can see on the label here, those ANCs go back to the CWL days. Crazy worm lady African night crawlers. But as you can see, there's space down here. So once we get done working on these little guys and getting them fed, we're going to be moving them over and putting them into the lineup over there, freeing up some more space. Hopefully some more worm bins can fit on the other end. All right, let's put on a glove and get to work. So I made the cut in such a way that I maximize the number of access points into these little wavy features. They're pretty good in size. I guess if you're a small enough worm, they really like to crawl into little features like that of the cardboard, I've noticed, assuming that they're going to like that material too. I hope they do. So we've been gradually lessening the covers on both of these systems in order to try to help reduce dampness. And the one thing we did last time was, in addition to these pieces of newspaper, there were even extra newspaper bits resting in here as sort of an extra vapor barrier to prevent evaporation, but we figured let's let the systems breathe. So we actually ended up throwing those pieces of newspaper down into the last feeding area to serve as supplementary bedding. That's what's going to happen with these coffee filters here, because these coffee filters are being replaced. I've got a variety of different tempting, delicious things to include, such as the pumpkin is going to be the big showstopper there, but as you saw, coffee filters are also going to be included as replacement feeding zone indicators. So let's see, I think last time I was sort of just going through this general evaluation throughout the entire check-in to see where we stood from a moisture perspective. I think I even made reference to how that's what I had been doing throughout the check-in to see if, any additional measures need to be taken to deal with what might be seen to be excess moisture. But I think it was maybe a check-in or 2 ago where we pretty much graduated in both systems from having that sense that things were a bit too damp to finally signing both systems off as being in great shape. And no surprise, that's kind of how they are today. I'm trying to remember what the numbers are. Something about 15. Yeah, 15 is the age, but you got to add a 0. 150 days of age, both systems. And then there was 15, 14, 13. I believe 14 might be the feeding number. This might be feeding number 14, and I think 13 was the interval since the last feeding, 13 days. So 13 days ago we last fed, and now we're back to give them feeding 14 on systems that are now 150 days of age. I gotta tell you, there comes a time in every worm bin where you start to get that sense that you've kind of crossed over from the system being mainly bedding to being, perhaps more dominant with castings. For some reason, I think even while I was reviewing the video from our last check-in, I was kind of still feeling that despite the 150-day age, these systems were still coming across to me like being pretty young with all the bedding material that I saw scattered throughout the systems. Somehow, I don't know, a couple weeks time, could they have made such a big difference, or just, I'm not sure what it is, but it does seem like these systems are coming along really nice. It also seems like we could be pretty generous with the bedding. I didn't really notice any signs of those wrinkled up pieces of newspaper that I had thrown in there as the foundation for the feeding. So perhaps they burned all through that stuff as well. I mean, they were just kind of crinkled up chunks of large newspaper about this size, resting right beneath where the foods were. And I thought that I'd see, you know, some large chunks of it here and there. Perhaps we did actually bump into some. If it's a large chunk like that and it's not thinly shredded like it came out of my shredder, then it's most likely that. So there was some left over of it, but I kind of expected more. It was pretty interesting. Alright, so I guess since these did end up kind of large, and I would like for them to be submerged so that the worms really feel comfortable going at it, if they're going to eat it at all. I'm thinking we gotta come up with some interesting way of making sure that they're completely submerged. So usually I'll be carving a trench out to apply my feedings going the other way, kind of crossing the bin the short way, but here I think in order to fit this and still be able to also bury it and have it covered up, we got to go the long way. I don't know, I've got my knife here just in case we need it, because the I'll give them a couple of these too. This stuff was, well, pretty much frozen into a solid block, and I believe it might still be. Okay, well, perhaps having the knife on hand was a good idea. It's going to allow me to use it as an icebreaker and chip off a number of pieces here, hopefully not injuring myself in the process. I'm trying to see if we've been fair on divvying this stuff out. It does look like we could probably allocate one or two more chunks, and then if we leave the rest for the other one, we probably divided it up pretty equally. That's quite a good bit of food, and what this is going to bring with it, I can already feel it dripping through my fingers, is a whole lot of moisture. As this stuff starts to thaw out, even just from the warmth of my hand, it's already expelling a bunch of liquid. So, oh, I've got other napkins over here too, so let's even cover up with a couple. But you know what, before we do that, I've got a little bit of worm chow too. Perhaps we can kind of dust a little bit of that on there, and I'm sure they'll appreciate that. I've got a funny feeling anything that's in contact with this pumpkin is not going to last. And I think we can almost guarantee that now if we were to also add a little bit of worm chow to the top of that stuff. I don't know, if you ask me, that's going to be a popular spot for the worms. Let's set this one up that way too. I'll tell you, this material is so nice. So nice and crumbly and fluffy throughout. I'm often very skeptical as to whether it's even possible to recover after you've seen your system go to being just way too wet and damp and muddy and sticky and gooey. And I really don't offhand recall how bad things got in here, but we definitely had classified these and were reacting to these systems as if they were overly wet. So we there we go. So we you know, we were taking various measures to help the system come back down to normal moisture levels. And it's always nice to sort of not be firefighting when you're simply just coming in and enjoying the opportunity to check in on the wormies, give them a little treat. So, I don't know, have we been more generous over on this side? Perhaps we were a little bit. Looks like we might have given these guys on this side a couple extra chunks. Kind of makes me feel like I should grab a couple and bring it over to help even things out. How does that look? Perhaps if we'd not covered up the pumpkin on the other side, we'd be able to better see what the distribution is, but I'm going to just assume that we did a good job splitting up the food for these little guys. Now, let's see. Let's not forget, we want it to also sweeten the deal, right? Throw a little bit of this stuff around the feeding area. I'm just guessing that based on how that newspaper that they got last time as the foundation for their feeding, how that stuff vanished 1, 2, 3 over the past couple weeks. Seems to me like that's probably what we're going to get with this stuff here too. It is all dry. Well, not all dry. I guess when the pumpkin starts dumping its moisture out, that's going to be far from dry, that's for sure. But for now, it's all going in dry, requiring hydration. I'll be curious to see what happens down the middle. It's going to be interesting too, because usually we're kind of feeding the opposite direction, so I always sort of expect to see a gully form across the width of the system this way. Now we're going to see a gully, a cavity form after they eat all that yummy pumpkin, going the opposite direction. Alright, and let's not forget, we're going to have to orient our feeding zone indicators accordingly too. I guess what I mean by that is that when I mark where we last fed, I even do sort of try to orient the feeding zone indicator, basically a coffee filter, this way, showing it was fed that way, but now we're going to have to do it this way, right? If we want to be consistent with, the thinking. So, I think that brings us to the end of our check-in. What do we got here? All we've got is some stuff that I forgot to do, like I always do. We had thought that these could go in as supplementary bedding as part of the feeding. I totally forgot. So you know what? Maybe we'll just have double feeding zone indicators, perhaps by being under the primary feeding zone indicator, the new one. Perhaps the old stuff will get a little bit of attention, maybe get nibbled on by the worms a bit. We shall see. All right, everyone, let's get these things covered up because we're done. And I've got a few things I got to get cleaned up, but you know, I'm not going to keep you around for all that stuff. Because that's boring, as you know. Before I go though really quick, let me just say thank you. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. It's always very much appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. That's very much appreciated as well. All right, everyone, thanks for watching. Have a great day. Bye now. Worm rescue.